Good evening, everyone. Will Kelly with the Inside Disney Infinity podcast. Not the best intro. With me, continuing the Extra Life Marathon, I have Jason and Lloyd playing for kids 25 hours of Disney Infinity. And right now, we are very happy to have a special guest of ours, Mr. Chad Lidell from Avalanche Studios. Good evening, Chad.
Hey, how are you?
Doing outstanding. How are you doing tonight?
Very well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I think this is awesome what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. I know I'm not the only one that's really excited to have you on, and you've been so instrumental in at least helping us with this Extra Life program, and then also just a great conduit it is a good word to for fans from fans to Disney Infinity, and so it's awesome. And after this show, right after this interview, we are going to give away our one of our prizes that that you helped us get. And so I know there's a lot of fans out there that have donated that are really excited about that. So it's good. It's been good.
We're more than happy to help with this. We think it's a fantastic cause, and anything we can do to help out is, it's a great thing for us to be able to help with.
Right. Well, Chad, do you mind just telling everyone a little bit about your role at Avalanche Studios and then also on Disney Infinity?
So technically, I'm a lead artist. I don't actually do very much lead art. Very well. I don't do it very often anymore. On Infinity, I was the team captain of the Infinity team. It's kind of a hybrid design producer type of a role. I was pretty much the first person to work on the toy box, and I stuck with it through the end and helped lead the team and help with the design effort for it.
That's awesome. So you've really had a chance to see the toy box in all its incarnations.
Yes, very intimately.
Can you speak on that at all? Is any maybe awesome milestones going through that process, or just kind of aha moments as you were kind of transforming it into what it is today?
Well, yeah, there's actually a lot of them. Are you familiar with the kind of how it came to be? I'm not sure if you're familiar with that story or not.
I would love to hear it.
Okay, you're gonna make me think back a long ways. I think we started. It was probably around February of 2011. We were actually in a different building at the time with a small team that was working on the sequel to Toy Story 3. It was Star Command, and it was with all the Toy Story characters. And we knew that we were going to be online at that point. We were going to support 4-player online or more. And one day, Bob Lowe, he's the director who's over me. He was over a huge chunk of the game. He came to me and he said that John Blackburn, who is our he's our vice president and the head of our studio, he said that he had this idea that he wanted to have a live a waiting room for when people are joining up to play online, and he called it the Rumpus Room. And the description from my memory, the description was pretty much he wanted a small room where people could just go in, play with some toys, kind of just mess around while they're waiting for their friends to join. And it's pretty small. And my first thought, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I was really underwhelmed. I was like, oh, please don't be me that has to work on this thing, And yeah, we kind of all vied for, we wanted to work on the sexy stuff, which that was, at that time, nobody thought it was going to become anything big. But since there were only a few of us at that point, it was just a small prototype team. I drew the short straw, which ended up being a good thing. And so we started out, gosh, I wish I had pictures because it would be really cool to show. I wonder if I have something somewhere. I should see if I can find it. The very first version looked like something out of Uncharted or something. I did this. It was like this lush jungle thing, and it didn't look anything like what you would have thought. It was on this precipice, and I used we had different areas of the game, and I made little. They were like posters, and you could walk into the poster, and it would teleport you to the different what was equivalent to a playset at that time.
That's neat.
Well, yeah, and I showed it to this group that we call them the core design group. They're kind of the executives, the highest people up in our organization. who, they give the thumbs up or the thumbs down or the thumb sideways or the kick in the shin for what you're working on. And they looked at it and they were like, well, we know what we don't want it to be. It was so far off. And, they said to, it was basically keep working and make it less, looking like a jungle and more like something that a kid would actually enjoy. And it wasn't like Vietnam jungle, but it was jungly. So we kept working on it. At that time, I think there was just two of us that were working on it. There was myself and a guy named Derek Newman, who's a very capable designer. He ended up, I think he was pretty much the principal designer on the Power playset. So the next iteration was like a small, I'm trying to remember the order. I think it was pretty much a small box, and I put like a bouncy ball in it and just a couple of really small things. I put the goo from Toy Story 3, which was like a little thing you'd pick up and throw it. And I took it home to have my kids try it, and I was expecting, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but usually my kids don't want to touch anything that Dad brings home, especially when it's really early, because it's usually horrible. And I put it in front of them, and my son and my daughter, who at that time, they were like 10 and 6 or so, it's 10 and 7, they picked it up and started playing around, and they played for a lot longer than they had any right to. I was watching, and I was just like almost embarrassed. I didn't want my kids to like yell at me or throw something at me, but I saw quite the opposite. There was a spark, and they started, mostly they were just like punching each other and kicking each other and picking up each other and throwing each other around. But they had a lot of fun, and it was kind of this weird, almost surreal moment where I didn't have any idea that we were onto anything at all, but it was this kind of like this little spark, and I didn't know what to make of it initially. So they had a lot of suggestions, and a lot of times, when you watch somebody play, you can tell, they need, you can tell pretty much what's wrong and what would help. So I went back, just kept plugging away on it, and it slowly started to evolve. The next iteration, I think, was a small island, and I think the very first part of that island, there was I had a couple of buttons, and you could push the button, and it would pop out a couple of small toys. And I took it back home, got the kids to play it, and I soon started to see they liked it a lot better than you would expect. Most my kids, I'll bring home, I almost said the name, I bring home like a competitor's game, and they'll play it for a half hour, and then they're usually done. They don't have a lot of longevity with most games, but they were playing in this simple little area that, gosh, I wish you could see it. It was tiny, and there was not a whole lot there, but they could play for like an hour at a time, 2 hours. So I just kept iterating on it, and I showed it to our core design group. They had some feedback for it. They had some good stuff to add to it. We had a creative director, art director guy named Mike Thompson, who he helped out, and we decided to change it so that there was this toy dispenser instead of, we didn't have an interface at that point. It was this kind of this tower, and it looked kind of like a gumball machine, and you'd go up and you'd stand on a pad, and you could use your controller, and you could cycle through different toys, and they were in different genres of toys. There were like characters, and there were cars, vehicles. We had an airplane. I think some videos of that airplane have been seen. It was really freaking cool, really fun. We had these different pieces. I took that home, and my kids started going ballistic. I started getting kids in the neighborhood and playing it, and it really took off. It was really crazy. It was like, there was one moment in particular that just is forever etched in my memory. I had them playing. I just set up the box in a room. They started playing. I left for like 4 hours, and there was my kids, my daughter's 2 friends, probably another 1 or 2 friends were here, and probably like 4 hours later, I started hearing screaming and yelling, and I was just like, oh, what is going on, And I went in there, and they were like jumping off the walls. They were having a blast. They're playing with this toy. Well, you know the Invisinator, that pad that'll turn anything invisible.
Mm-hmm.
It was something of a bug, but it's something that maybe we'll reintroduce. I'm not sure because it was really awesome, but it would turn anything that touched it invisible. So if you're in a car and you drive over it, it makes the car invisible, and you just see the character like hovering. And they were going through every possible iteration of what they could do with that. They were picking up characters. They'd pick up a townsperson, walk over it, and then it would look like they became the townsperson. They started role playing, and they were just having a blast with it. And at that point, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is something different. I've never seen this in a game before. It's affecting my children in a way that I've never seen before. At that point, it was just this tiny. I mean, it was pretty much. I think at that point I was probably doing 80-90% of the work on it. So we decided to do a play test, an official play test. And that's usually a pretty big deal, and we don't usually do them that early in a project. But we got about 10 kids, brought them into the office, and had them play it, and they were playing it. I think there were 5 groups of 2, and they played for just an hour. But I'll never forget. They were so loud that normally, our environment can get sort of loud, but you never hear like scream. Well, outside of crunch time, you never hear screaming.
It's a different type of screaming, right?
Yeah, and I remember just they were just they were having a blast, all these kids, and I remember like looking at the door, and there was like this line of programmers coming over, and they're like, "What's going on in here? This doesn't sound like development," And it was really cool. And from that point, I think everybody just kind of clicked that we had something that was unique, and it was special, and it was worth pushing. And it also, at the same time, Cars was being finished up. People were starting to transfer from working on Cars to our game, and it just kind of it blossomed, and it answered this really difficult question for us, which initially we got to this point where we knew we wanted to make multiple play sets with multiple properties. But one of the big problems is depending on who you ask, some people think that's like pure evil, and some people think that's super awesome to mix characters and mix properties. And within Disney values very highly the opinions and the rights of the content creators to be able to control what they do and not just have it hoard out, basically. They're very, very particular and very careful with making sure people are happy with the products that they've worked on. And some directors of movies and other people very high up weren't comfortable at all with this idea of mixing properties. But what this gave us was this perfect way where we can say these are going to be toys, because we knew we were working on toys by that point. And these aren't this isn't the real Jack Sparrow, this isn't the real Tonto, this isn't the real Sully. These are toy versions of them, and within their play sets they can be true to property, and they can provide an experience that is something that fans will love, and that is not going to be tainted by mixing them. But outside of that, we can put them in a toy box, and it can be this complete mashup, and anything goes, and that's okay. So at that point, it just pretty much became the thing. And it was interesting, though, because it took some time to put into words what we were seeing in playtests. Because I'm an adult, more or less. All the people who develop these are adults. But we're not accustomed to dealing with that type of toy play. I mean, it's essentially what it is when we called it the toy box, that was that was a very accurate and well thought out name for it, because previously it was called the Rumpus Room, and that didn't work for a lot of reasons. But toy box, it really accurately described how the play works in there. It's like the way I've always described it is it's like you're throwing a bunch of toys on the ground from a toy box, and you're playing with them. So the problem was that's a really difficult concept for an adult to engage with. It's a difficult concept to tell a vice president of a company who is putting millions of dollars into a game. Hey, trust us, this is cool. Kids like it, and so do adults. It's not something that you just naturally pick up. So we went through kind of a long period where the challenge was, for me personally, and I should actually back up and say everything I'm saying is just from my own personal point of view, and I don't represent Disney in any way with this. I'll get that out of the way. Should have done that earlier. But anyway, yeah. From my point of view, the challenge was I knew what I was seeing. You know, it was clear that there was something special. It was clear that it was, you know, what it was. It was really hard to describe it to people and to say, trust me, this is fun, without people actually seeing kids play it. Because you know, we don't know how to. You know, if I showed up, Will, at your house and I dumped a bunch of toys on the ground, you'd probably be like, what the heck are you doing? You know. But if I did that to my kids, you know, if you came to my house and dumped a bunch of toys on the ground, my kids would be like, yeah, you're awesome, Will for president. You know, it's a totally different way of thinking, and it's not. And it's funny because sometimes, you know, for game designers, we think so much in terms of like, how do you make a challenge out of this? How do you turn this into what we think of traditionally as a game? Because the toy box is not a game. It's emulating toy play, and you know, games are part of that, but it's a lot bigger than that, and it's also something that's fairly unique. So we spent a huge amount of time just trying to figure that out. At some point, of all people, it was John Lasseter who, in my mind, he pretty much solved the problem. He was on board fairly early, especially with the toy side of this, and we showed it to him. I wasn't there. I wish I would have been. But they showed it to him, and they videoed it, and we were in this big meeting with our entire company, and they played back some snippets of this video, and he said, you know, this is imaginative play. This is how children play. This is how I grew up playing, and this is an important thing. This is what helps people develop the ability to be innovative. It helps people to develop, you know, all these life skills that are very important. And for me, it was this amazing moment. I actually cried. Like I teared up. I was like, "Oh, you're such an awesome guy. You get it, and you can put this into words. I love you." It was this really special moment. You know, and it had really fit into, you know, some of the things that I'm very passionate about. I mean, I used to work primarily on M-rated titles, and I started. You know, we had a family, and it was like, I remember. So I worked on Twisted Metal Black, and you know, obviously Sweet Tooth is a big part of that, and the cover of that game is that it's a pretty iconic, you know, half-faced view of Sweet Tooth. Mm-hmm. My son was, when he first got to that age where he could even just, you know, start to conceptualize what a video game is, he saw me playing it once, and he saw that cover, and it freaked him out like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he's still, you know, we what is today, the 2nd? So 2 days ago, Halloween night, he and I watched Poltergeist, and that clown is in there. Nice. You know, and he was like, "Oh, it's not as scary as the Twisted Metal one, but it's pretty freaky." And you know, it stuck with him, and so, you know, I was making M-rated games. My kids were to that age where, you know, it's kind of like explaining to your child that you're a pimp or something, you know. It's like, it's this difficult situation, you know, and you know, and it was a cool thing because, you know, I got to go work for Disney. That was, you know, this conscious decision because I wanted to make family games. But the thing that has always bugged me about when people talk about family games, they always mean games that are supposedly made for small children. You know, and they think, well, we've got to make something really dumb and dumbed down, and that kids, because kids aren't capable of doing something or playing and engaging in something that's really awesome. And whenever they say family games, they really mean, you know, little kid games. And I've always wanted, you know, I've had this dream. I wanted to make this game that was family in the way that Pixar movies are family entertainment, where you know, for me, it was I very much wanted to have a game that I could play with my 3 children, and I could play with my wife, and all of us could enjoy it. And when, you know, John Lasseter said that, it was like, I felt like, you know what, we're on the start of something here. This could be what, you know, I think might someday become that first true family game. And so it was exciting. It was really cool. It's been an honor to work on it.
That's
Did that answer your question?
uh,
Sorry, you get the vomit.
no, that was awesome. That was an amazing story, and it's so interesting to hear. It really seems like you kind of stumbled on the golden game. And what I
It's
mean
not a
by
game,
that,
though. It's not a game.
no, it's not. What would you like to classify it as?
I
An
don't know. You can.
experience?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, well, it's toy play. It's
It's toy play. There you go.
yeah.
So you have the playset side of things that appeases the kind of the property owners and the creators of those titles. You have the toy box, which allows the freedom of adding different characters and just being much more creative and open-ended. And then you have this kind of experience that is universal, and no matter what age you are, whether you're a child or a young adult or an adult, it's universal, and it does for at least me. And I've kind of talked about on the podcast with the guys playing with us tonight, is that it makes me reminisce on the times when I was a kid playing with my toys, and I'm an adult now, and being able to relive that and experience that is amazing. And it seems like you hit every check box on kind of that. What is the best possible game to appeal to every audience and every kind of gameplay style?
Thank you. I mean, I'm glad you guys are feeling that. I feel like we still have a lot of work to do to make it so it's truly mass appeal, but I do feel like the platform is well on its way, and there's a lot of potential there still.
That's great. So, as the Toy Box lead, correct? That's kind of your title.
Yeah, team captain. It's not
okay.
quite lead. It's something funky. I don't know. We have weird vernacular.
So, do you kind of are you the one that kind of herds cats in a way? I mean, are you one that kind of organizes much of the Toy Box? Because the Toy Box, outside of, I feel like playsets might be a little more traditional development, game development, because it's a linear story, and you have these components that are kind of traditional to game development. But the Toy Box is just so unique, and it's so open-ended. Did that kind of have its own challenges compared to the types of work you've done in the past?
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is we didn't know what it was. I mean, usually, like the only other time I've seen this was like when we first made the transition from 2D games to 3D. Nobody knew what 3D was really about. It was like all those first PlayStation games, they were all side scrollers that happened to be 3D, or they were like Battle Arena Toshinden, which was like a side, it was a Street Fighter, but it was they were only pseudo 3D. And I feel like we're in a similar sort of state. I think I look at like the industry right now, and games are one thing you can do with a console or with a PC. Digital entertainment can be a lot bigger than it is, and I feel like we're just in the infancy of this, and I'm hoping that we can push that angle, and we can push to make to make Infinity something a lot bigger than just traditional games. It's a big challenge, but I feel like we're on our way.
That's awesome. I'm curious, Jason or Lloyd, do you have anything you want to ask Chad?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Toy Story 3. I played through that with my kids, and we play through a lot of Disney Infinity as well. But I found in Toy Story 3, the kids would want to basically play in the toy box mode kind of side part of the game, where they'd run around, they'd punt citizens, they'd explore, they'd jump everywhere with Bullseye, and then I was left to doing kind of the more mission mode and playing through that, and they'd watch. And it's kind of turned into the same thing with Disney Infinity, where I play most of the missions through the adventures, unlock all the cool toys, and then they immediately want to jump into toy box mode to play with them. I guess where I'm going is, do you think that's probably responsible for the huge the huge groups of different people that are playing this game. You have the really young kids, the 4, 5, 6-year-olds that are messing around in Toy Box, even using it like Big Duplo and just kind of stacking things and making cool structures, to having a kind of a deeper experience for the adults. Was that a plan, or was that
Absolutely.
just like, or was that lucky?
No, it's very much planned. When you think about that structure and the way that it flows, Lloyd, you're a father. You probably know what it feels like to have to be the provider for your family, and it kind of ends up that you emulate that same kind of functionality with or that relationship with your children. It's kind of funny because like our family, I play a lot of Minecraft with my kids. I'm the guy who goes and I do the mining. I get all I get the stuff, and my kids just play and they make use of those. So it's definitely conscious. It's just we're very story driven in our approach to doing that. But we also, it was very conscious it was a decision that we wanted to do to allow kids to basically do what they want. It's kind of part of that whole family gaming spiel. It's everybody. We all approach problems and games and the way we interact with the game differently, and we wanted to provide as wide of an experience as possible so that everybody can enjoy it.
What about you, Jason? Do you have anything you want to ask Chad?
I was just thinking. I personally have never played Minecraft, and I've never played what's the other one? Skylanders. I've never played any of those. I've never let my kids play them. My kids have hardly played Disney Infinity. Most of this was looking at. I'll probably play some later on this afternoon. But I was just thinking it must frustrate. I'm probably even guilty of this. It must frustrate you somewhat when people directly compare Disney Infinity to Skylanders. I know when I pre-ordered the game at my local EB Games, they were describing it to everyone as Minecraft meets Skylanders. I guess that would be extremely annoying, I guess, because it clearly is something totally unique that really doesn't need to be compared to those competitors at all.
Yeah, honestly, for me personally, it doesn't bother me at all. I have a lot of respect for both of those games. I think they're great. I just think we're doing something different. We definitely share the toy component, but the game itself is something different. I think over time that'll just take care of itself. I don't think it's a big issue.
Do you feel like the advertising is communicating that message clearly enough about the toy box play side of things?
Honestly, I don't really think about it too much. As far as I'm concerned, that's somebody else's job. Yeah. I don't have a problem with it. I think they do a really good job. I think ultimately, if it's my job is to make sure that the game is its own thing, and I concentrate on that, and let the chips fall however they do.
I would love to see some old school, like some old school 80s playset style advertising the new playsets, like the old He-Man castle. That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. Yeah, it would be awesome.
Well, I'm really excited to see how the holiday season is affected by Disney Infinity. I think that's going to be a really, really good thing for Disney Infinity, and I'm definitely excited to read all the news about that. And there's no doubt it's been highly successful. 2 weeks ago, I think some sales numbers were released, and for a product like Infinity, it's without a doubt, I think it's been a success, and so that's great for us as fans to hopefully lead to something in the future. And I'm assuming that's obviously it's good for you too because you work for the company that helped build it. So
definitely, yeah. I mean, I think they've always planned on this being a platform. I think they've been very open with that, and I would be very surprised and saddened if it didn't just keep going.
Yeah.
Are you able to give us any insight into the selection process for the weekly Toy Box winners?
Honestly, I have zero knowledge. Well, almost zero knowledge of that. I know that there's a group of people that I actually didn't know until probably a lot later than I should admit. There's a group of people that Disney embedded in Avalanche that work on that, and beyond that, I don't know anything about it. It's not the people who like you interviewed Worth and the other the Toy Box, they're the rendering or the art team. It's not those guys, and it's not our architect team, which are the people that put together most of the levels that are in the game. It's other people, and beyond that, I don't know much about it.
I have kind of two follow-up questions about that, actually. Can you tell us, so for the adventures that Avalanche has created for different characters and the masteries that are just in the toy box themselves, those kind of toy boxes and those environments, were they built the way we build them, or are those types of toy boxes using the same kind of tools? I mean, obviously everything's possible, I would imagine, but does that have a different set of like more development editing tools for those?
So we had this initial goal where we wanted to make them entirely using the tools that were available to players, but the truth was they weren't at that point, they weren't robust enough or polished enough for us to pull that off. So we had to use our own proprietary tools that we author. They're actually the same tools that you use for the playsets, but what we did want to do is we wanted to make them in a way that you could approximate them using the Creativa toys. And in the future, we wanted to move more and more to the point where we're authoring them in game, that's kind of the end goal. But for Infinity One, we didn't get quite to that point. But hopefully, I've gone through the process with some of the, I did a video on, I did a video on how to make a game. With a little bit of with a little bit of creativity and a background in programming, you too can make games in the toy box. There's a lot of capability in there now, but not as much as there will be in the future.
Well, and so kind of my follow-up to that, given, again, not necessarily the restraint, but the parameters in which people like us have to work within the toy box, has the product of the toy box challenge winners surprised you and others at Avalanche?
It's another thing I actually can't comment on because we are full bore in production mode right now, and I don't know anything that's going on outside of it's not in my hall, or in our floor, or and it doesn't involve the health and well-being of my family at home when I get home late. I don't know what's going on.
Well, from my perspective, and Jason and I, we've talked a lot about on our podcast, but some of the things that some people have come up with have completely blown me away, and things that I wouldn't even think would be possible. And so you guys definitely create a great set of tools that are very robust for people to use. So
I'm really happy to hear that. One thing when we did develop this, it became pretty clear that well, actually I should even back up. So the kind of the thought that drove the Creativa toys, at least in my mind, was we wanted to make a toolbox, and I felt very much like, hopefully I'm helping to invent a hammer, and I'm helping to invent some wood and some nails, and I have no idea if somebody's going to make a shack, which was kind of like what we were doing initially on our own, or if they're going to make the Taj Mahal. I mean, you hope that those tools are robust enough. But frankly, I don't think we had any idea what the true capabilities were. And in fact, I still think that I think as time goes on, I'm sure people are going to find all kinds of ways to manipulate and change the rules of the toy box and create games and create other experiences that we never ever thought of. And honestly, that's one of the most exciting things for me to see is watch it. Like I remember when what's the guy's name? It's Somewhat Awesome Games, I think, on YouTube, made the the old Grand Theft Auto thing. I thought, oh man, I can't believe you thought of that before I did, because I wanted to do something like that, and I was blown away that somebody could do that quickly. I thought it would be a while. We have this programmer. His name's Jared Scheibel. He's one of there's a handful, for about 3 or 4 guys that worked on the programming side on the Creativa toys. And he's like this crazy smart. I mean, he's brilliant, and he started doing stuff that just melted my brain. It's like, one day I come in, I'm like, what are you doing? He's got this huge, complicated setup of pressure plates, and he's dropping soccer balls onto kill toys, and he has this intent look on his face, and he's all intense. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, quiet, I'm making a 16-bit or CPU, and he showed it to me, and I was just like, like my brain just pop. And it was like at that point, and we had a tester make a fully functional calculator, and I still haven't. I haven't been involved the last month or so in the community much, but I haven't seen anybody do a calculator yet. But I know you can do it, and the fact that he was making logic gates using kill toys and soccer balls was like, I mean, that's like, he should work for NASA helping, astronauts to get stranded. It's just this crazy, like, how do you take bubble gum and tape and make a 16-bit CPU? Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I think we knew that there was some potential that we just, I don't think anybody knows where it's going to be, or where it is currently at, and I think in the future those capabilities are just going to take off.
Just to further that, do you think that is kind of a huge surprise from people outside of your studio, maybe people at Disney? I know you don't want to speak for anybody else, but just how creative the community has been and how popular these toys and toy box features are, how popular it's been for them, and if that's maybe going to steer this game, other games maybe? Like, has this opened a lot of eyes, do you think?
I don't know for sure. I do think that there's generally a belief that people who play video games are really smart, and they're very, they're when you play video games a lot, I actually think it exercises this part of your brain where you become really good at this kind of a thing. So I'm not surprised. I don't think many people are probably that surprised at what's happening with that. I think probably the biggest surprise was more like how many bugs there are, the difficulties, because it's one of those things, like from our standpoint it was like it's one of these things I feel really bad for. A gentleman by the name of James Rowe, he was our lead programmer, and for a long time I was like, come on James, you've got to put this feature in and this feature, and we've got to support this and this, and he came back and said, that's going to cause problems, and I didn't realize just how difficult it is when you have this gigantic game with all. I mean, it is almost infinite possibilities, especially on the bug side. I think that's probably one of the things that surprised a lot of people. Was like we shipped and we thought it was pretty tight, but our work was just beginning on that stuff. Yeah, so it was a great learning experience, and I have to put in a props for for our programming team. Actually, our whole team. Those guys work. It's one of those things. Like I tell people that people who work in games work like hours that. I mean, we're jealous of doctors. It's like, oh, those interns, they got nothing. They get paid well. It's like making video games is really, really hard work, and people generally do it because they're passionate, not because it's a, it's not the sexy job that people think it is when they get into it a lot of the times. But those guys are so passionate, and they cared so much, they just pushed through, and it was really tough well, it wasn't tough, but it was, it was a lot of work, and they were amazing. I got to give props to those guys.
Great. So a theme that I've kind of going through and interviewing, lucky enough to interview a few people, and I've always asked kind of what are some aspects of things they helped work on that are their favorites. Do you have any like that? I mean, I assume in your position you might that umbrella might be a little bit larger than otherwise. But do you have any just kind of favorites, things that are in the toy box or just in the game in general that you'd like to mention?
I don't know that I have favorites. I like we had that whole thing we called the Skunkworks project, where a lot of people got to contribute ideas, things they were passionate about, to make assets or things like set pieces and such for the game. I did a couple of those. I did the gate for Nightmare Before Christmas, and I did Buzz Lightyear, the ride car. I got that in there. And both of those were just kind of fun little extras. So from that perspective, it's fun whenever you get to work on something. Especially, I didn't get to work once we got really moving. Until the end. At the end, I gotta fix bugs. But I didn't get to contribute to the game as much as I have in the past. But beyond that, I mean, honestly, there's so many things that everybody has their favorites, and they have these things that are special to them. And to me, the most exciting thing is seeing the people's, both fans and developers' response to each one of those pieces and getting excited about them. I think is just awesome.
Before I ask my next question, Lloyd or Jason, do you have anything you want to add or ask?
Not at this point in time.
Sorry, what was that?
Not at this point in time. We've got something brewing, but I'm just trying to articulate.
Anything from you, Lloyd?
No, I'll let you go.
All right. So, Chad, being as experienced as you are in game development, can you talk a little bit about? So, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I want to say Minecraft started out as not a Kickstarter, but kind of one of those.
It was a little indie game.
Yeah, an indie game with a lot of fan interaction for its creation, and totally makes sense for a game like that. But with the game as complicated as Disney Infinity, at this point we've had a couple patches come out. But with that being said, I was very happy, and there were some bugs that were reported here and there, but I was very happy with the polish of Disney Infinity. But I can imagine that only some of these bugs would come out when you're essentially having thousands upon thousands of people working in it, because you just can't recreate every scenario when you're beta testing. Is that true? I mean, was there some weird things that just didn't come up until it got into all the fans' hands, or because again, like I said, to me it seemed pretty polished, all things considered, for how complicated it was.
Well, I mean, it's extraordinarily difficult to get. I mean, you think about it. There's 1,500 toys. It's almost impossible to test. What happens if I take, something like a pressure plate? I hook up the super launcher to it, and I launch it into a fan toy, and I launch something from the fan toy through a goal. I mean, there's so many. The number of iterations or the things that are possible to do is just mind-boggling, and it's just huge. I mean, we tried to design the system so that the system could generally handle things like, for instance, Creativity Toys. Each one is designed to do pretty much one function, and the theory is if it does that one function cleanly, and it works right, then you shouldn't have too many bugs. But yeah, there's so much stuff that you just have no idea is going to happen. But the good thing was I didn't expect it. I don't think many people expected. I think we thought it was pretty tight when we shipped it. But obviously there was a lot there.
So Creativity Toys is an interesting piece of the toy box. I could imagine a world where the toy box was just the building aspect and not really the programming aspect. Was that something that was always there and part of the big picture of what you all wanted to do?
No, it wasn't always there. Early on, I think we had this guiding philosophy. This was about imaginative play, and as we were developing, we essentially made a really big list of as part of if I'm in this world and I want to do something. If I want to, what do I need to do that? And part of that is, a lot of people want to make their own games. A lot of people want to take control of that environment. That's the way that they're expressing their imagination. I don't know. I can't remember the timing on it, but at some point, I think there was a group of us that felt like it needed something like this. I put together a design and we pitched it. It didn't go anywhere for a little bit, but at some point it caught on, and to us, it's actually it's a it's an easy sell, or it's an easy, it's an obvious feature, right? It's like we know that if you can put game creation tools in the hands of people who are playing the game, they're going to come up with something cool, and it's going to make the game better. And and in essence, we can utilize the creativity, in a lot of cases, the brilliance of the fans of the game and the players of the game to be able to make some really neat stuff. So at some point, it felt like it was obvious. It's kind of one of those like check boxes. If you're going to make a game that appeals to more of a hardcore audience, you need to have some sort of creation tools like that. But it actually didn't come on board until actually pretty shockingly late. It was not too long before we started to button up the game.
Interesting. I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry to bring this up, but some criticism, and it actually has gotten better, which is a really, really great thing. But in the early days of Infinity, and granted, it's only been 2 months at this point. It seems much longer now, but some early criticism was that the communication wasn't as good as some fans would like, as far as both discussing the game and communicating with some support issues and some needs of fans, but then also because the toy box can be so complicated, and especially with these creative toys, and you kind of give the basic overview of it and some of the mastery adventures, but there's some that even for me, I'm still trying to kind of figure out, and there's a ton of great resources now, and now I assume it's your PR team and Avalanche people are working to make these weekly kind of instructional videos, which have been awesome and really helpful. Is that something that was kind of at launch? Was that something that was understood, and it was just like, well, we just didn't get to it, or it was just too complicated? I don't know. It's
well. So I think I know where I understand the problem totally, and thinking about it, and this is just from my perspective, I think it kind of all stemmed from part of it was, like I mentioned, the Creativity Toys came online really late, and typically what happens is on most games it's a crazy, chaotic. I mean, the best games, like, I mean, if you've read about Valve and you've read about Insomniac and Naughty Dog, I've got friends that work at those companies, and there's a fair amount of kind of flying by the seat of your pants, trying to figure out what you're doing and running. It's like running with scissors as fast as you can, but you have like hundreds of like glued all over you. You're like Edward Scissorhands kind of a thing. And the truth is, it's like you've got a finite amount of time. And a lot of times it's like you have to make these really tough decisions. It's like, do we push the game as hard and as far as we can go? Do we slow down, and do we try to get better tutorials? Looking back, I don't know, how we could have done it differently, but I felt like, our team probably could have done a better job of trying to figure out some of those things earlier. And so the end result was. I that's like the thing I'm working on now, is like this onboarding process and figuring out how to get players familiar with the game. I felt like that was one of the places where we really, really need to improve. And all of those things you talked about, like PR and all those other things, are really they all stem from that chaos. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things. At the end of the day, I don't know how always to improve it, because you can't, especially when you're making a game like this where we're trying to do something that's fundamentally different and new. It's really tough to know that these problems are going to happen. It's hard to have the foresight necessary to know that they're going to happen. And we do our best. We work extremely hard to make it as minimal as possible. I mean, honestly, so I did a handful of tutorial type videos, and the entire reason I did those was because I felt like what was in the game wasn't enough. It's like I knew it was complicated. Creativity Toys, it's this interesting thing, because, in fact, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. The principles behind that, they're programming. I mean, it's kind of like this I very much think of this as like I've got a 13-year-old son and he's learning to program right now, and something like Creativitoys is this extraordinarily powerful learning tool for somebody who's kind of in that stage of life that he is. He gobbles it up, but I oftentimes I think gosh, if you didn't have a dad who does this, like how would you learn this stuff? And I keep wondering, is it knowing that there's a finite amount of time, should we spend more time teaching this stuff at the cost of not having as many features or as many pieces in the game, or should we what's the right balance there? I don't know if it's going to be as big of an issue because we have that the platform is there, and now we just need to we need to keep iterating, making it better, making it more innovative. But we pretty much, I think we understand what the core of the toy box is, so it's not going to be as hard. But still, I feel for everybody's pain because I felt it too. I think for us, it's just we have to learn from it. We have to do, the best job that we can in the future, and not put our PR department in such a rough spot.
Well, and I honestly do believe, I'm not just blowing smoke, and I don't know about Lloyd and Jason, but I do feel like the Infinity world we're living in today is entirely different than it was two months ago, and they recognized what they were listening and recognized what people were saying very, very quickly, and I do think that they kind of turned a corner where now it's almost hard to remember that. So that's really good, and moving forward, it's only going to get better, I would imagine. So.
Yeah, I think that it was a learning process for absolutely everybody. Even, you think about it. So somebody who's in tech support or something like that, they probably don't have the knowledge of the game that at the beginning that they do now. It's putting them in a really tough spot. Honestly, I'm obviously very involved with the toy box. I don't know all of it. If you ask me questions about the playsets, I'd be like, I have no clue. It's complicated, so we put them in a tough spot, but they've done a great job. I think all things considered, I can say this: they are absolutely dedicated, passionate people who listen and they want to improve as much as our team. So. Yeah, we'll get better.
That's great.
No, your videos basically was what I started out with. It's the reason why I was able to get in right away and have fun with my kids, making enemy generators and all that fun stuff. So that was a huge help, and just wanted to thank you for putting those things out. I think it definitely was well needed by everybody that was just getting started in the toy box mode.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, because it's something that's like it keeps you up at night. Like, oh, there's so much cool stuff here, but nobody can use it because it's too complicated, So I'm glad it's helping people. I really appreciate you saying that.
No, I really appreciate it. I'm trying to think of another game that scales like this Infinity, because the fact that I can sit my daughters in front of it and just give them the controls of the car and just scream around, but then as they grow older, there's that increasing depth in the game that they're going to be able to engage in. And as somewhat of a programmer myself, I look forward to the opportunity to be able to maybe teach them a little bit about what Dad does for a living through a toy, effectively. And I think that's really, as we know, Disney's pretty universal. Us grown adults love it, but my kids' eyes still light up when they see these physical toys, so to speak. And honestly, there's just nothing else out there. It's either games today are either solely built for kids or not built for kids, I guess. I think that's it's exciting. I suppose that's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, that's cool of you to say. It's an interesting thing for me to look at this because, video games are my life. Like I'm completely, my entire life, there's nothing to me besides video games. It's like we moved into a house and it's like I meet my neighbors and they're like, hey, what do you do for them? I'm like, I make video games. And I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, I'm an accountant. And I go, crap. I have nothing to say to you. I can't think of anything besides video games. But the thing is it's like video games get a bad rap. It's kind of like saying paper is a bad thing. It's what you do with it. if it's how it's used, and I really believe that video games and digital entertainment is a potentially extraordinarily powerful tool, and for educators, and more for that than that, it's more about, like, in my mind, it's like, can you create a product that helps people become innovative and to solve a lot of the world's problems, it's cool to be able to work on something where, that's something I'm passionate about, and it's something I think that we can push towards. And I really, really want to make something that my kids can take and they can learn. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, learn programming by playing a video game. They don't even realize they're doing it. It's like, I feel like now our responsibility is really, how do you get somebody to play this and learn those things organically through the game? How do you learn that? And how do you onboard? It actually goes back to that whole, like, the toy box is all about imaginative play, and the hardest thing in my mind is, how do you take somebody who's kind of lost that spark of imagination and take them by the hand and lead them into this so they start to enjoy it? It's like, time will do it, but a lot of, like, it's interesting because, like, I watched people on our team that they just did not get the toy box early, and over time, it's like these guys that were like, I don't get this, and you start to see them there playing around with, like, they're building up something like a tower of blocks, the physics blocks, and they're knocking them over, and then they start doing more and more, and they really get into it. But it's like, now, in my mind, it's like, I really want to be able to take somebody by the hand and lead them into this open, world of infinite possibilities, and help people learn to play again, to get back in touch with that childlike imagination, and to help kids to, at the same time, be able to learn to innovate and create really cool things, that will help them outside of video games. Sorry, I'm like, yeah, you've got me on. You've touched my my passionate nerve there. What's really important to me. I hope I'm not spewing too much.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Chad, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't have the details, although I do plan to talk about it on a future episode. But I was looking through Twitter the other day, and I found someone who is teaching a basics, I think, or I don't know if he's teaching, but he's using Disney Infinity and the toy box to teach kind of basic programming to, I don't know if it's a class or if it's a series of classes he's teaching, and so it's possible, and it sounds like there's people out there that are using it as a tool to really to do that, exactly what you were just speaking on. So
that's awesome. I hope we can continue to make a product that is like that. I know there's a dude who has made a mod for Minecraft to teach quantum mechanics, and like that is just so cool. Yeah, there's so much potential in this area.
Yeah. Awesome. Lloyd, do you have anything you wanna ask, or Jason?
Well, one question. I guess it's going to be hard to answer if this is something that might be coming up at some point in the future, but if you could make one change to the product now, before it shipped, is there any one big nagging thing that you would have said, I wish this would have been done different, or wish we would have added this or taken this out?
I don't know if it's because you've got, we've been talking a lot about creativity toys or not, but I wish we would have had time to polish that and be able to test it better. There's some stuff in there that's not as good as it can be or will be. Yeah, it's also, going back to that imaginative play. If I had a magic wand, there's so many elements to being able to play imaginatively. It's that we haven't touched yet. Things like, well, actually, I don't even want to talk about it because I'll get myself in trouble. There's a lot of potential there. I'll put it that way. I don't know though. Yeah, given the time constraints and the manpower constraints and what we had, I'm proud of what we accomplished. But yeah, there's still, we've got a long ways to go.
Well, it's one of those things you can't ever make everyone completely happy, so you just kind of try to do as much as you can for the majority of the people.
but I will say, moving forward, it's definitely a goal. We listen very closely to the community, and actually, people. We finally got to be able to play the game. I had never touched playsets at all before, and I've been playing through some of them. We listen, and it's our goal to make a game that absolutely everybody loves. It's like I said, we want this to be a family game where a mom and a dad and kids can all play together and have a great experience and a good learning experience and a fun experience. So hopefully we'll get there.
I've said it a few times with a few people I've talked to, and the three of us have also mentioned it numerous times, and it's very obvious that this is something that the creators are passionate about, and you've all worked so very hard to make this the best as it possibly can be, given the restraints you're working within. So with that being said, I'm curious, because it seems like there is a much more personal involvement from a lot of people who worked on the game, and going out of what's kind of above and beyond what may be expected of people by engaging in the community, or in the development, the countless stories of people working on stuff on their own time. I'm just curious, kind of, where is that an individual thing, or what is it about Disney Infinity that creates that kind of motivation to really go above and beyond what's just required to make the game? Because I've never, as a fan, I've never seen it in anything else I've ever participated in, or any other game I've ever been this involved in. So.
You know what? It's extraordinarily unique to see this kind of thing in this industry. I mean, in 20 years, this is the first time I've ever seen this happen, and I actually think primarily it's a testament to John Blackburn and the people at the top of our studio, and the guys at Disney, John Vignacchi and John Pleasance, and they really have done an incredible job of creating a culture that allows both grassroots development and it marries it with a really strong management team that knows that if you can when people when you're working on something, if you're passionate about it, you'll do a much better job. And this is, in my mind, it's kind of it's like this perfect storm, because all of us at Disney and all of us at Avalanche are absolutely passionate about Disney, about Pixar, and the properties that we work on. I wish I could walk you around the office. Even like when we all first started, it was like everybody already had tons of Disney toys, and we have people that know more about Disney. I mean, you could pull out the most archaic movie, and they could tell you all about it. Actually, they're very much like they're typical Disney fans, and I think there's a handful of people. Reed Hawker, I know you interviewed him. It was so awesome to see him start this movement where he went home. He was passionate about making Scrooge's Money Bin, and he did it. And I was just so proud. I mean, I was like this. Oh, you're so. It's so much. It's so awesome that he would do that, because you have to think this is like, if you compared it to a doctor becoming an intern and the hours they're working, Reed was probably up in the 70 to 80 hour a week range. And he goes home and he dedicates probably 6 to 8 hours to create that. If that's not dedication, I mean, have you ever heard of something like that? And the thing that was awesome was, I mean, that in itself was like, wow, Reed, you rock! I can't believe you did that. You're my hero. But it didn't stop there. That was just like the beginning. It's like people all over the place. These people who are working their tails to the bone. We were so tired. It was like, there's some days you come in and you just feel like a zombie, and and this was like, we were working on a lot of bugs by that point. Everybody came in. We had people in the animation department. We had concept artists. We had character artists. We had people who weren't artists. We had designers going and tracking down artists. Like, hey, yo, can you help me with this? And it almost, just watching it was just. It was mind-blowing to me that kind of thing could happen. And I think it's really a testament to the culture that the guys at Avalanche created. It's just a great place to work.
That's great. Well, Chad, we don't want to keep you all night. I know you.
If you got more questions, I'm fine. But yeah, whenever.
Lloyd, Chad, do you guys, or sorry, Lloyd and Jason, do you guys?
Did you find yourself maybe now or during development? Obviously, you've got a ship date. We've got to meet. We've got these targets. But at any point, did you ever get sort of extensions on that based on how well the game was shaping up and people maybe getting excited about it? I mentioned in the previous interview about the unprecedented support from the Disney marketing machine, so to speak, with the whole Times Square thing, something you don't normally see for particularly a Disney game, and that sort of GTA was, in my opinion, marketed bigger than like GTA 5. So was there sort of, has there been leniencies, or are you finding now that it's been a success that you're getting maybe a better, not being pushed as hard, so to speak?
I missed that last probably like 10 seconds. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, just asking, is it more lenient now that this game has been a success, or during the development when it was shaping up to be something big? Did you get a new release date? Like, was there a new release date? Let's just say, let's another 6 months to really, put the spit and polish on.
So we were going to ship in March, I think. Well, no, that's not right. In June, we were trying to release the same time as Monsters University. So as far as I understand, retailers actually wanted to push us more to a fall release. And it was something that lined up well for us. I mean, it meant we could have more polished product. So I think it was kind of a win-win for almost everybody. I'm sure there was somebody, like probably some accountant was pulling out his hair or something somewhere. But for the most part, I think that gave us, I think, it was about a month and a half or 2 months. I think, that's one of those things that's so hard in games to, if you can, it's like you'd want to push forever because, it's like you're creating this, it's a baby, it's our baby, and you want it to be as good as it absolutely possibly can. But at the same time, you need to get it out before, it's like you gotta push it forward. So it's kind of a balancing act. But it didn't. We slipped just a little bit, and it wasn't really a slip. It was a conscious decision. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And just quickly, because I really don't know. Toy Story 3 was before this, but what was the game that Avalanche did before that, before the Toy Story 3 game?
Well, so I came on. I actually worked at Fall Line, and we worked on like Prince Caspian, and we did. I just in my mind it's Band. It's what was it? Ultimate Band. Avalanche has a really long history, which I haven't been there that long, so I couldn't even do them justice. But they've been around forever.
Chad, I have a question for you, and I don't know if you can really speak to it, being the Toy Box captain. But I'm curious that it seems some of the choices for playsets versus Toy Box assets, whether it be characters or texture disc. Hey, can you discuss the process of how that was determined? What would be a playset character and what would just be a Toy Box only character? Because moving forward, we have a few characters like Frozen, for example, that is really timely, and it seems like it would make sense for a playset release. I'm just curious if you can speak a little bit on what was the deciding factor on, because I have my own ideas and we've talked about it on the podcast, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more from the horse's mouth.
So I'm not personally involved with those decisions, but I can kind of just give you, from my own perception. It's extraordinarily complicated. When you're making a game, like I kind of talked about this earlier, where the directors of the films for the characters you're making, and the people who created that, going all the way back, they all have a say on what you do. And some people, it's easier for some people to see, their baby be made into a product than other people. A lot of film people are not necessarily gamers, and a lot of, there's a huge varied opinion on that. That's one aspect of it, and then the other aspect is, we had a really big team, but it wasn't. It's like it takes a lot of time to make a playset, and a lot of, it takes a pretty good sized team, and it takes a lot of time to do it. Initially, I don't know that we didn't know this was going to be huge. Nobody knew this was going to be this big thing. It was kind of like, we're making a game. We're trying to push it as hard as we can. We want to do as many playsets as possible, but at the same time, we want to be smart and not make something that is going to flop. And there's a lot of uncertainty there, and it's I'm glad that I wasn't involved with those decisions, because I would have. Well, I've already lost my hair, but I'd lose my beard. I don't want to lose my beard. It's all I got. And my back hair. I could lose the back hair. But yeah, it's really complicated, and I don't know the ins and outs of it at all. But just standing back at and watching the history, I remember there was a lot of talk. It was like, oh, we're gonna do a playset for this, and then the next week it's, oh no, we're not gonna do that. We're switching it for this one, and there's all kinds of things that go into that are honestly they're above my pay grade, and but now it's interesting because we want to do everything. There's a lot of things we wish we would have done. I mean, I saw your Halloween, I watched your Halloween podcast, and I was right there with you thinking, yeah, why didn't we do Nightmare Before Christmas? I love Nightmare Before Christmas. But the reality is we had a finite amount of time, and we didn't know fully what we had, and it's like we would have had to have dropped something else. Yeah. So, we have a really good relationship with Pixar. Doing Pixar games is, I think, for a lot of people at Avalanche and just in Disney, it's kind of a dream come true. A lot of us got into. I mean, Toy Story had a huge effect on me and my decisions. Actually, at the time that came out, I had worked on some games before it came out, and I had worked on some film stuff, and I was actually thinking I'm going to go back to school. Actually, I had gone back to school at that point because I wanted to become a doctor. And don't laugh, because I know I would have failed at it. But it came out, and it was like, no, this is awesome. Like it blew my mind. The other one that blew my mind that I shouldn't even admit was Lawnmower Man. I remember that came out. I was like, oh my gosh, they have a human and he moves around weird, but it's cool. But I was so passionate about 3D at that time and everything behind that it had this fundamental effect. So I love working on Pixar games. I could just do Pixar games, but everybody's different. There's a lot of people that are passionate about everything that Disney has done, and it's a platform. This is 1.0. Hopefully, over time we're going to. Nothing's been ruled out, so hopefully over time we will see, everybody's favorites, all the big things. I'm actually I kind of joked about Darby O'Gill and the Little People before, but like I know we'll have arrived when we do the Darby O'Gill and the Little People playset.
Well, and that's the great thing about, and you don't necessarily have to comment on this, but that's the great thing about Infinity and even these toy box characters, and it's been smartly so. I think it's been talked about that moving forward, hopefully all your characters and those things, it's a continuing project, and so you're going to be able to use the current figures for future iterations if we get it, and that to me says, maybe we don't have a Nightmare today, but we have a figure today, so maybe we'll get it at some point, and that possibility is exciting. And as a fan, it's like, you know what, I don't know what the future holds, but today I have this awesome figure, and I have these awesome things I can do with it in the toy box, and I can just kind of hope for the best in the future.
Yeah, I wish we had this magic wand where we could just wave it and a playset would appear, or content. But our magic wand is really, it's made out of sweat and blood and tears, and it's not very magical. But hopefully the end result is.
Yeah. Well, again, you have so many people with so many differing opinions on what's the best, or in their eyes, what's iconic Disney. So
yeah.
But
over time, I mean, I think we're going to satisfy hopefully everyone. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. I'm curious, and we asked Worth about this earlier this evening, and you just touched on kind of like your background a little bit, but would you mind going over a little bit your path to get you to Disney Infinity, and a little bit about some of the other stuff you've worked on in the past?
Like my career in games, or
yes, yeah.
So gosh, I started actually fairly young. I was fortunate enough right out of high school to more or less get an internship. I was really interested in 3D. I worked for a very small company that bought some very expensive gear. At the time, it was like comically expensive. It took like $100,000 to do animation and lay it to tape. Just the crappiest. It was like Power Animator and stuff like that. If you're into that stuff. And I worked for this company, and it didn't go anywhere initially. But the one thing I took away from it was I was lucky enough to be able to learn to do 3D graphics, and I was very passionate about that. And then it's kind of a funny story. A few years later, I did a lot of like just contract work for just awful, like the deer hunting games and like Myst clones and just complete crap like that. I shouldn't say that because somebody out there I know loves those games. They wouldn't love the ones I worked on. But I was lucky enough to kind of get in when nobody was doing this kind of thing. It was all 2D. It was mostly hand painted. My background was in sculpting. And 3D was just, it was a dream come true to me. I'd always dreamed about it. I had a friend who's, I grew up in Utah. I had a friend whose grandfather was, he was one of the key guys at Evans and Sutherland, which, pioneered it. And, I had these early memories. I was like 10 years old or something, and he was showing me 3D renders of they were like these horrible like tanks made out of they were basically a box with a gun on it, and it wasn't even a gun. It was like a box with another box that happened to shoot squares. But in my back then it was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And so anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. But I learned 3D. I had gone through that period where I thought that there wasn't really a future there, and I was like, there's I was like, you're young and people expect you to do something real, not make graphics for I mean, now it's probably cool, but back then it was like everybody's like, what are you doing? That's a waste of time. Be a doctor, cure cancer or something. Anyway, so I went through a period where I didn't really work in games too much. I was primarily concentrating on school. I had done some stuff on the side with a guy who he was an interesting character. He did 3D. We did some advertising stuff together, and we made a demo reel. And he got a job at Single Track. I think this was like maybe '95 or so. And Single Track, they were the guys who they did some really pioneering work on the PlayStation 1. They were kind of the first guys to make 3D games that were really 3D and not just pseudo 3D. He got a job there using my demo reel. I think it was it was probably 2 minutes long. I think like 1 minute and 58 seconds was my stuff. And he didn't tell him initially. And somehow it came out. He told him what happened, and I got a phone call. At that time I was engaged to my wife, and I got this phone call, and they're like, hey, do you want to come interview? You do 3D, right? And they're like, yeah. Well, we want to give you a job, because nobody knew 3D at that time. So, they interviewed me, gave me a job offer. I actually turned them down initially, and then a couple months later, when I needed some money, I called them back, and I started there. So my path is primarily I worked at Single Track on my first game was, I think it was more or less, I came on at the tail end of Twisted Metal 2. Worked on some games there, and then that place imploded at some point, and I kind of followed. I went to Incognito, which we did Twisted Metal Black, Downhill Domination, War of the Monsters. I worked there for a very long time, and then from there, they kind of went the way of the buffalo, and I went to this point where it was like, do I want to work with the survivors of that, doing the same kind of stuff, or do I want to work on something different, and specifically family games? And so I went to Disney, and my background. It's funny because my schooling's in computer science. I was a a computer science major. I've worked on design pretty much since I've been in the industry. I've worked on art. I worked on sound a little bit. Don't tell anybody that because I don't want to work on that again. It's just I'm one of those people. Video game development is just it's in my it's in my blood, and it's it's all I know. It's super passionate about the whole process. I've been really lucky to been associated this with for as long as I have. Sorry, that's like blah!
Hey, that's what we wanted. I remember
Sorry, what was that?
So we've got 25 hours to fill, don't you? Feel that.
Okay. How many hours we got to go?
Yeah, you only got like 60 more hours to talk, Chad. I hope you're up to it.
By the end, we're going to be like talking about parthenogenesis and how it relates to video games and fun things like that.
Worth kind of beat you to the punch earlier. He started throwing philosophy at us, and I'm like, I've been playing too long, buddy.
That Worth, man. No, he's actually Worth is such a good guy. I've got a ton of respect for him. He's smart.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember some old Incognito games. The names are escaping me right now, but I remember the splash screen so vividly on the PS1.
That was single track. Yeah, Twisted Metal, Jet Moto.
That's not who
Warhawk.
did Warhawk. Oh,
yeah,
I was
Warhawk.
in love with that game. I remember.
Awesome.
Sorry, this is a tangent, but I remember getting my PlayStation 1 and I got Top Gun because I'm a huge Top Gun nerd. But then the demo disc. You guys remember demo discs? That's every system. And I played that one desert level of Warhawk on the demo for months, and then I finally got the game, and then I played the game for months. It was an awesome game.
Yeah, I didn't work on the first one, but it was actually funny because when Single Track called me, I knew who they were. I had no idea that they were like 2 miles from my house, and it was like, you're here? No way! Oh yeah, I'll work for you. I mean, it was like, it was really, really freaking lucky. I'll put it that way.
That's awesome. Well, Chad, I think we're gonna let you go unless Jason or Lloyd has anything for you. I've run out of questions. I know as soon as we hang up, I'm gonna come up with a million more. So
I got one more question. I don't know whether you'll know the answer, but have you got any insight into the actual toys themselves? I've commented many times it's so detailed and stuff, but is there any history to like, were they going to be in another format? Are they going to be smaller or bigger, or any insights into that side of it?
The future of them?
Yeah, no. When they were being developed, like the physical toys, like as they stand now, was that always the way they were going to be, or was there designs for smaller versions or larger versions?
Gosh, I'm not the perfect guy to answer that. And so take this as being from a sideways observer who has a bad memory. But I remember that when they were developing them, one of the big parameters they had was they wanted to make the best collectible. They wanted great toys, not just like there was a lot of passion. It's like a lot of people love Vinylmation and some things like that, and it was interesting because Avalanche had zero history making toys. No one had ever made a physical toy before that, and it was like, man, you guys got. It's funny because they have it's shocking the lead time to create a toy, to finish it, get it manufactured. Get they have the RFID chips in them. To get those in there and coded, you have to have just an insane amount of lead time. It's like a year or something like that. they wanted to do something great, and they, I remember, like, I think I had a photo on my Tumblr of some of the early versions. I think they were a little bit bigger, but they weren't huge. I think they landed. I think they were really happy with them. They landed really close to where they wanted them to be. What do you think? What do you guys think of them?
Yeah, they're awesome. I just can't believe the detail in them. They're so for a mass-produced toy. I can't believe the quality of painting and all of that.
Yeah, I think that's a product directly of the artists and the designers that made them. Jeff Bunker is the gentleman who is over that department. He is an amazing art director. Like, watching him work and communicate and go through the process of figuring those out is just, I mean, I could just sit around and listen to him, with his team work this out. Have you guys played the interview with Matthew Armstrong?
No, not yet. That's coming up.
He talks about that. I'll leave some of that for him. But it really is just a product of the people making it being as big of a fan for toys as anyone, and also they're just crazy good artists. That was like when I first came to Avalanche and to Falling. That was one of the things I was so excited about. Is I had come from a studio that wasn't really well known for the art side, and there were some good artists there, but it wasn't the culture. Our culture was make good games fast, and to see the love and the passion that those guys have is just it's so cool. I wish we could do like a making of the Toys of Infinity type of video or something to show like a really in-depth one, because it's crazy. Like Matthew talked about it a little bit, but something as simple as ankles. I mean, it's funny, you watch a meeting and there's like 7 grown men and they're debating ankles for an hour. They're debating the way that a shoulder, the flow with how the surface goes from it's this nice arch, and then it has this kind of sharp but not super sharp curve on the shoulder, and then it flows down into the elbow. And there's a philosophy behind that. That's it all comes down to how do you tell a story with these features and the forms and the colors, helping to emphasize the story of these and helping to engage people with the game. There's just an extraordinary amount of depth to the people who came up with that, and I feel really lucky that I've been able to watch that happen.
It's not really a comment, but it's interesting to me when you brought up the lead time that these physical toys create. There's another constraint that you have to work with when you're developing, and that's something you kind of have to plan for, I would imagine, which is something, like you said, toys are brand new for Avalanche Studios, and dealing with that whole side of things has got to be interesting and quite the learning experience, I would imagine.
It is. It's beyond interesting. It's like I said, I could just sit there and watch those guys because they're really, really good at what they do, and it's extraordinary that it happened from people that have zero background in toys. In fact, I don't know. Maybe that's actually one of the reasons they turned out as well as they did.
That's real cool. One of my favorite pre-launch videos and production videos. I remember it was the first glimpse we had seen of the toy version of Buzz Lightyear, but it was discussing that whole process, and it showed a little bit of concept art or the grayscale models, I think, in that video. It's really neat.
Is it the one that had John Lasseter on it for a bit? Yeah, he was so involved. I'm sure you guys have heard how he's a toy geek.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to go to Pixar not too long ago, and I got to see some of his stuff. It's like, holy, he toy geek is not the right word. Like, it's kind of like if you were the most passionate person alive and had an infinite budget, how many toys would you buy?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he's so into it, and he had such a huge impact on the game. It was really, really cool to be able to work with people like that.
Well, that's got to be pretty awesome for you, being such a Pixar fan.
Oh, you have no idea. Like, when I had that opportunity to go to Pixar and to get like a private behind the curtain kind of view at what they do, oh my gosh, I could live just like if they'd let me be like their janitor, and I'll work for free and I'll clean up your mess if you can just let me watch you work, because they're extraordinary. They are the best in the world at what they do. It was awesome.
That's cool.
I wish I could post pictures. They have a swimming pool on the premises, or on the not the premises, on the what's the word, on the
Campus.
Yeah, the campus. That they like bring the water in from the ocean or something. It's brackish, but the way they talk about it, it's like, yeah, their attention to detail is it's amazing. You can see Steve Jobs' hand everywhere you look there.
That's really cool. Well, awesome. Lloyd, any last minute items for Chad?
No, I mean all my questions have been covered by other people. I'm just I'm amazed that this game turned out so well. But thank you for making it that. It's been a blast to play with my kids, and I just love having kind of the game time with us. It's been a real treat.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Actually, can I ask you guys a question?
For sure.
I'd love to hear what you guys what your favorite part and maybe your not so favorite part of the game is.
Okay, I'll start. My favorite part, like if I have to pick, like say a play set or whatever, I'm a huge fan of all the Toy Story stuff in the game. I mean, I was a huge fan of Toy Story 3, and you could really see the love and attention to detail. And I guess it kind of makes sense considering you talked about what you were working on after Toy Story 3, which was basically Toy Story in space, similar to that anyway. You could see where a lot of that love and passion came through, and we've been having a real big blast playing through that. As for my least favorite, I'm a collector. I have like collector's OCD when I play video games, and I really wish that you could bring up a list of the amount of capsules that you found compared to the ones that you've missed, because I'd hate to be the person that missed one skin for my building or one little object, and it's just kind of annoying not knowing that I actually did miss one until I happen upon it. It's like, damn, I wish I could have picked that one up a week ago or whatever.
Yep.
Small little thing.
That's good to hear.
Jason, do you want to speak? And I will, if you're okay, Chad, I'll post this to the chat room because it's a little bit delayed, and see what they'd like to say.
I think my favourite part of the whole game is the mix of the old and new. I knew I was going to love the game the moment the Autopia car was in the intro part, and it started playing the soundtrack, the voice from the Autopia car. I just love that mix. I love that there's like you haven't got it yet, but the Headless Horseman horse. I mean, my girls don't know those cartoons, so I just love that mix, that there's this fan service to the old school Disney fan, but obviously right through to the latest stuff that hasn't even come out yet. So I just think it just feels like a really cool love letter to Disney, basically, to the fans. So that's my favourite part of it. Plus, I appreciate the diversity. We've got like a Red Dead Redemption clone, and we've got a Pirates of the Caribbean 4 clone, not Pirates of the Caribbean, Assassin's Creed 4 clone, all in one box.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you didn't copy those things, but you know what I mean. Like, so rare to have such diversity, but also good versions of diversity. They weren't crummy little things. They were just cool, little fun experiences. And I guess if I had the one thing I guess I don't like, it's undoubtedly the lack of sharing options to share our toy boxes with other people. And maybe just and it sounds really silly when I start to see what people are creating, like what the community created, the top 5 toy boxes, but just little things in the toy boxes, like the ability not to be able to scale the blocks and those sorts of things, make it a little bit hard. And I guess the best example is like the Mario level that was put out there, and it's frustrating that we can't lock the character to that 2D plane, if you know what I mean. It's hard to create a cool 2D level when you can still move in those 3D spaces. But we understand that obviously it's hard to put all those things into perspective when it's the first iteration, I guess. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Actually, I think my own frustrations are probably right in line, and the things I love about the game are right in line with what you said.
Actually, I lied. I think my favorite thing of the game was the intro video. Playing
really?
that through, and it wasn't just the intro video. It was playing through with the kids and seeing the look of utter amazement on their face as everything was being painted in. It was like, holy, this is something that we're going to be playing for a while, and they're going to love it. That was just amazing. That intro video and that whole scene that you got to play through.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too. The guy who did that, his name's Jason Richards. He's one of the most. I just absolutely respect the heck out of him. I wouldn't say single-handedly made that happen, but he definitely had this huge impact on it, and it's cool that it actually blows my mind that they were able to pull it off in the time, with the time restraints they had. I love that part too.
So I'm not going to actually go into specifics because everything that I both love and would like to see changed are small, which is a good thing because there's no one glaring thing missing. A few small things is I'd like to see some improvement with the way water's handled in the game. I'd like to see a little bit of improvement over some of the creativity toys. For those park lovers out there, I'd love to see the ability to have kind of automated tracks where, for Autotopia, you could jump in the car and just kind of have it go its own way. But as far as what I love, I love the concept in the game as a whole, and luckily everything blew my expectations out of the water, so that was an awesome thing. And
cool.
But from the chat room, we do have a few things, and I'd love to share those with you.
Sure.
So, Jay Carguth, I think that is Justin. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Well, actually, first let me say, some strange person by the name of Mutated Jellyfish says his favorite thing is Tron, but I don't know.
That guy's got Tron on the brain. That's all he talks about. Tron.
But Jay Carguth said that he would like to see some diversity of games and characters. I'll ask for clarification on that because if he's referring to characters, toy box characters, I've heard more than once it'd be nice to have more unique abilities per character to kind of add some value to that. I'm not sure if that's what he's.
I should actually ask. I can't hear specifics. I can hear him, but I'll have to ignore him.
Okay, so should I stop? Sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, commenting on the last game, I think is fine. Just
gotcha.
Yeah.
Model Train Man said he's disappointed there's no tracks for trains, and
there's a story behind that. So we had the trains in Lone Ranger, and it was on our list of things to do. We just plain ran out of time, which makes it a potential for the future.
Well, that's exciting. Model Train Man said, "Oh, that's the tracks for trains," and then no PC version. But I'm not going to ask you to comment on that because that's yet to be determined. So, and he also said Disney could better outline challenges, and I'm going to ask for clarification on that. If you mean direction for those challenges or what? So while I'm waiting for Mutated Jellyfish or Model Train Man, Chad, is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there, is there anything specific you would like them to know, or anything really?
I think the biggest thing is thank you. It's cool because when you're developing a game, we think a lot about the player. How's the player going to play this? We don't think about fans very often, and to work on a game that has people that are so passionate it's absolutely awesome. I think it's kind of opened up this ability for us to engage with players and to make them kind of a partner in the development of this, and help shape what this game is going to be in the future. Seeing on the forums what people are saying is so extraordinarily helpful. It really gives us some insight into particularly what the biggest fans want out of this game. And along those lines, what you guys are doing, it just blows my mind. I think you guys are absolutely awesome. You're the power. I think it's so cool that you put these videos together. I mean, it really helps other people to learn the game. From my selfish perspective, I find it highly entertaining, and I think you guys do an extraordinary job, and we really, really appreciate your hard work.
That's awesome. Well, and I know one thing I would just like to tell you, and this is a sentiment from the entire team, we really, really thank you and appreciate everything you've done for us for Extra Life, and I can guarantee without your help kind of spreading the word at Avalanche and helping us with some of these exclusive giveaways, and it would not have been nearly as successful as it's been thus far. And so from us to you, we really thank you for that.
It's our pleasure, and I think the Extra Life, the movement and the charity is just it's such a great thing. And I think for us at Disney, it really kids are so important for what we do, and it's something that we're always thinking about. And having been through some experiences in my life where I've had to spend some time in hospital with some kids and some things like that, I think it's so awesome what you're doing to help them out. And I mean, the whole both Extra Life and what they're doing, and showing how games and gamers are, we're not just mindless zombies, shooting zombies. But it's a group that really cares about people, and they care about children. And then how much work you guys have done, it just blows my mind. You guys are so freaking awesome. It's just a really great thing you're doing.
Well, thank you for that. It's fun, and it's really great, and the fact that if it makes the smallest difference, then it's all been worthwhile, and I think we can sleep soundly when we do go to sleep.
Yeah, we'll see what you're saying tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Yeah, it's still relatively so. The rest of the majority of Extra Lifers out there started at 8 a.m.
Wow.
I think Eastern time, and so we're definitely a little bit behind that. So they're more than halfway done, and we still have a ways to go, but that's all right. We're gonna push through.
How's your Red Bull supply?
It's they're chilled in the fridge, and they're just waiting for me. And Jason, I know he has some special
adult beverages.
I've got a lot of stuff. Don't worry about that.
No, I can't remember. Well, you'll plug it later, but he has his own energy stuff going on over there. So, just before I let you go, Chad, MTM said sometimes the challenge request throughout the week, and I know that's not necessarily you, but like next week's challenge is Toy Story challenge. He's just hoping for a little bit more clarification on that in the future. So what exactly they're looking for, but
yeah, I wish I knew myself, but I'll pass that on. Great.
Well, Chad, listen, my friend, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday evening and talking with us. I'm so thankful, and it's been awesome. And Lloyd and Jason, if you want to say anything before we let Chad go.
Yeah, no, it was really nice chatting with you, Chad. Love the videos you put up. That's how I initially got to know you. Love watching the tweets and all that other stuff flow by. It's really great that you're supporting us while we support you, while we help kids. It's been a huge thing. Just this involvement with this charity has been really great, and I just want to thank you for that.
It's been really nice to hear that hear your passion about it. It's easy just to, I guess, attribute these things to the big Disney brand, and it's nice to just hear the individual voices on the project, and it makes it all that more special, I guess. And thanks for that, mate.
You bet. Thank you, guys. You guys are totally awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, Chad, can you do me a favor? Can you get some rest and sleep for the four of us, because we're not going to be getting any tonight?
Yeah, I absolutely will, and I'll let you know how nice it is when I wake up.
Oh, you do that. And if you get bored later or whatever, stop on by the chat room and say hello. We'd love to hear from you. So
Will do. Have a great rest to your night and to the rest of your your following day. Good luck, guys.
Thank you. We'll
Thanks a
talk to you
lot.
soon.
See you guys.